Fall camp for the Huskers is open and confidence is abound. We'll get into day one next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On College. Terms apply.
Okay, good morning. It is Wednesday. The long wait is over. Tuesday in Lincoln. We saw the Oregon Duck appear at Memorial Stadium. We heard from Matt Rule, Marcus Satterfield, Tony White, Ed Foley, 12 Huskers. And today, Wednesday, Connor, Nebraska is out on the field practicing the game of football. This is like a holiday in the state of Nebraska when this day arrives. For some reason, as I was around the facility on Tuesday, my mind flashed back to the summer of 2020 when practice began and we didn't know if it was going to be one practice or two practices or three practices. I think I will always remember that and hanging out around the facility and just hoping, just please keep practicing. Please keep practicing. Don't take football season away from us. So on this day, we remember that we should be grateful for the sport of football because we have it and we've not always had it.
And we should be grateful that that Puddles the Duck is allowed at Nebraska's practice, or he wouldn't have been in 2020.
So weird.
Is very odd. That was my first, like, I was sort of watching the coverage from afar yesterday, and that was the introduction to it. Is like I just saw like a barrage of pictures of the Oregon Duck. I'm like, what is going on here? I love it, for the record. I love it, but I was wondering what was going on.
Let's talk about this for just a second before we get into the show, and we're going to get into all that happened on Tuesday in Lincoln. But I got down to Lincoln about 9:45 and maybe 9:50. The media room opened at 9:15. I should have gotten there upon further review about 9:30 because they built this media room to handle a large number of people, and generally every day during the season, the off season, when we've had availabilities, it works just fine. There was not a seat for me. I think I almost had to knock over a TV camera to jam into a seat in the back row. It's hard to ask questions from the back row. Coaches don't hear you. Matt Rule apologized to me for not hearing my question and then continued to talk about that for several minutes after I got my question. And it was slightly uncomfortable for me, but as I was coming up to the facility, the Oregon Duck was standing outside, and I'm like, is this some imposter? Like, is there some Oregon fan in Lincoln who got dressed up in a duck and is out here trying to make waves as preseason practice begins? No, it was the Duck, and he was posing for photos with anyone who walked in. I was lucky enough to avoid the Duck. He was busy with someone else, as I think it may have been Steve Merrick from Rivals was got caught in the Duck's web. So then I walk into the media room. Yeah, what's that?
They were having a conversation, Steve and the Duck.
They may have been. It may not have been Steve. It could be totally wrong on that. But I was looking the other direction, trying to avoid eye contact. And I went in, and some of the Nebraska media relations people were in the entryway, and I kind of looked at them, and they looked at me like, "Yeah, we don't know what that is." And so I went into the room where all the writers and broadcasters were, and somebody said to me, "Oh, you missed all the excitement." I'm like, "I saw the Duck outside." So turns out the Duck is going on a tour of campuses. Lincoln was the first stop, so it was kind of novel. Nobody really knew it was coming. And sure enough, a photo appeared a few minutes later of the Duck with Little Red and Herbie Husker at midfield. All was fine. This was not like an invasion. The Duck posted some photos on the Oregon Duck Twitter account trying to get into the stadium. I guess the Duck's going to be visiting with the Gopher today up in Minneapolis. So what is that? Like, that's, yeah.
Hey, look, they want to put that duck everywhere. They put the floating duck in the river in Indianapolis, and now they're sending the duck around to various campuses. I actually like it. I think that's good. I think that's conference camaraderie, even though it's just one school kind of reaching the olive branch out. But anyway, there was football talk yesterday. There wasn't football yesterday. There was football talk yesterday. I'll give you my big takeaway, Mitch, right off the bat here, listening to Matt Rule talk. I am constantly interested in the way that Matt Rule kind of like positions, he talks about himself, his own role, and the way he coaches his coaches and the responsibility that those coaches have. He is often talked about as a micromanager, and I think that is the case. I mean, you have to be a certain type of person to work for Matt Rule. And you have to do it like all the time. He's always on, right? As we can tell. But the way he talks about himself, and I don't know if this is all that much different from last year. I feel like he has given more control to his coaches, his coordinators in particular, his position coaches, and now that those people have basically staffs underneath them with all these other people coming into the program. I just feel like he's positioned himself even more now as the CEO of this program. The types of questions that he gets from the media, that was a big picture thought, and I don't know when it hit me during his 30 minutes up there yesterday, but it did hit me at the end. I'm like, man, this guy is not getting asked traditional head coach questions. It's CEO questions. It's general manager questions, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I see where you're going, and I think that's accurate. He's not taking the question about how will you divide reps at running back, or update us on the race to be the corner in the opposite Tommy Hill. And a lot of that is, like you said, the way that he has empowered his coordinators and assistant coaches. Tony White gets asked the questions about the depth chart. Marcus Satterfield gets asked the questions about development on the offensive line. And I have seen, and that's almost kind of the opposite of a micromanager. So it's interesting that this thing is kind of unfolding in year two like that, where he's giving this power. And I don't know if it's all that much different from the way a lot of coaches do it, or the way it's portrayed in a lot of programs, as far as what's actually happening when they get out to practice, or when they're in the coaching offices or the meeting room. The difference I think you see, especially with Tony White, is that the way it's put out to the public is different. How many coordinators have we seen over the years who were almost like scared of their own shadow when it comes to saying things that are definitive about the unit that they coach? Like, we've seen plenty of coordinators who they get asked about the quarterback or whatever, and it's like, you're going to have to ask insert head coach name about that. There's not one shred of that coming out of the vibe that you get from Tony White. Tony White is the head coach of the defense.
Exactly.
That's the feeling that you get. Like, I've never once heard him hesitate to answer a question. And it's because of what Rule empowers him to do. And he's not worried that, like, this is gonna rub the head coach the wrong way. Like, I'm in charge of the defense. That's his mindset. And I think other coordinators feel like that, but it's not the vibe you get from them publicly. So maybe there's the slight difference with the way things work around Nebraska, and the direction that they're continuing to trend even more so that way.
Yeah, I think they push further into it now that the staff is unlimited. It's infinity. You can have, you could build it however you want to build it. And Nebraska certainly wants to build it in a certain way. I think Rule has dove further into that piece of it, and I'm curious to see how it goes. I think he views himself a little bit closer to, if we're talking about an NFL model, not so much a head coach, more of a GM. And that's really interesting, because Nebraska's never had a coach like that before. They've never really approached it that way. They had a GM when Mike Riley was here. Remember Billy Devaney? But like that was weird. There were too many cooks in the kitchen. In this case, the GM's in charge. It's interesting to kind of watch unfold. What else on day one a whole bunch of players talk, both the coordinators, I guess all three of the coordinators, the head coach himself. Anything big you take away from talking day of fall camp?
Yeah, I'd say one final thing on that other subject, that first subject, is be sure that on game day, Matt Rule is going to be
Oh yeah.
every bit the head coach and not the GM. Like he's making the decisions on fourth down or what play to run on the goal line when the game's on the line. But anyway, yeah, during the week, Sunday through Friday, there is a lot of GM coming out of the messages that you get from Matt Rule. And Nebraska, of course, does have a GM in Sean Padden, who really oversees recruiting and personnel and all that stuff. So a lot of mixing and matching. But so yeah, from the players, here's what I got, and I think I knew this going in, but it was made clear to me and all the others who were there on Tuesday. You go around the room, and they did the player interviews out on the turf. This may be the only thing that they're using the turf for this year inside the Hawks Championship Center. There will be some lineman drills and some warm up and conditioning stuff that they do inside. But really, they want to be out on the grass because he wants to make this a program that plays on grass. Of course, at home, they're going to play on turf for 2 more years. But they did the interviews on the turf inside the Hawks, and they had podiums, and they brought in 3 different groups of 4 players. And it was like being at a bowl game media day event. This was a little bit different than anything we've ever had as far as the amount of access on day one or the eve of day one of preseason camp. What I got, and I think part of the reason Nebraska did this is because they have a strong, deep core of leaders. And they took 3 guys to Indy, Ty Robinson, Ben Scott, Isaac Gifford. We didn't hear from those players this Tuesday. We heard from 12 others, all of whom are considered older leaders in the program. So you got 15 guys out there who've given us their thoughts so far, and they're all part of a leadership core. I was struck by that, just how deep and real Nebraska, the group is that Nebraska has that they can rely on for leadership.
Yeah, I can't help but think of the request over and over and over again, the demand, I guess, over and over and over again that Scott Frost made throughout his time at Nebraska for leadership and how they need guys to step up. And here we are, 18 months into this tenure, and a bad season down. And it feels like they have done a really great job of fostering environments where players can step up and be leaders, whether they are the best players or not. Now it does feel like some of their best players have taken leadership roles. I mean, you just mentioned a bunch of them. And so they've really put forth an environment where these guys can grasp it, and they've been empowered, much like the coaching staff has been empowered to have more responsibility, what we just talked about. These guys have grabbed it and taken a hold of it. It's a deep group. It's an old, like, most of the players that will be playing for Nebraska this year, we're talking about the front 22. Those guys are old. And so, like, it's expected that those guys jump into a leadership position, but it is really cool to see that those guys develop in a really linear way, or a guy like Banks come in and just grab it right away and automatically be a leader in that category.
Yeah, Jamal Banks, the transfer from Wake Forest, for sure is a leader from day one on the offensive side. All right, after the break, we're going to get more into someone who is not an older guy in the program, Dylan Raiola. We continue to talk about the freshman quarterback because why not? That's next here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. All right, Mitch Sherman here to talk to you for a minute about Gametime, a sponsor of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. So as August creeps up on us and the pennant races are getting going, Connor, I got to find a way to get back to Kansas City. I need to see this Bobby Witt thing. He's going to be the American League Player of the Month. If he's not, you can just mail it in on any decisions that are being made in New York. Incredible to watch Bobby Witt, whether he's hitting a grand slam to win the game or making a diving stop to secure the win, or going from first to home on a single, as we saw last night against the White Sox. Just a great experience. And any Major League Baseball experience is a great one this time of the year. Gametime makes getting tickets easier and faster. Prices on the app go down the closer it gets to first pitch. There's no fees at checkout. You got flexible customer service. It's all there. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Check it out at gametime.co. Download the Gametime app today. Lowest price guaranteed.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about Factor. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. You can meet your wellness goals with a menu of chef-crafted meals that include options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll have time to enjoy the nutritious, great tasting meals from Factor. So the only question I have left for you is, what are you waiting for? Do it today. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always find new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious. From breakfast to dessert, stay fueled. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menu preferences. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use the code LockedOnCollege50 and you get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. Check it out. Factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. All right, welcome back here in segment 2. A few things left to cover on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'll when I wave goodbye, if you're watching along with us on YouTube today, this will be my last episode of the week. Once again, we're welcoming our first child here in the coming hours, theoretically. So we're going all the way up to the wire on this thing. Mitch he's got you covered on the podcast for Thursday and Friday here. Mailbag show, is that what I'm hearing? That's
what I want to do. I want to try this out on Thursday. First time. I'm going to be flying solo on Thursday, so send in some questions on Twitter as a reply to the tweet that we put out on the Locked On NEB Twitter handle, or leave a comment in the YouTube comments. I will get to that. You can email it to the show also at lockedonneb@gmail.com. We'll try to do a mailbag show on Thursday with all your questions as camp gets going. And then Friday, I've got a guest lined up that I'm excited to bring into the fold.
Okay, excellent. So that's the plan for the rest of this week. And we'll have real football practice to talk about on Monday and really throughout the rest of this week as we get going with the dog days of fall camp. Speaking of, Nebraska moved into the dorms, back into Selleck. By the way, sort of surprised they're doing this again. I kind of thought that was just a year one thing. Matt Rule, very excited to be back in the dorms. He absolutely,
I don't know why he loves it, but he really does. He really likes it.
He does. Tony White seemed less excited. He was worried that his second bed was going to get claimed in his dorm. He did take a picture last night and put it out on social media. Speaking of pictures on social media, a few of them went out for the Nebraska players moving in. They brought their bags. A lot of them, by the way, were wearing hoodies. It was 99 degrees yesterday, which was interesting. But there was one of Dylan Raiola who was walking in for his first camp and had his bags packed and ready to go. His sister was also with him, Taylor, in the picture. She works on the staff. So people were wondering about that. That's his sister. And also then Taylor Swift fans grabbed this picture from the Nebraska football account and said, "Patrick, what are you doing going to Nebraska football camp? Did you get traded? What happened? I don't understand this." So a lot of dust ups yesterday on social media.
So we had the Oregon Duck and a Patrick Mahomes impersonator on campus within a matter of hours. This was odd. My 17-year-old daughter pointed this out to me on Tuesday night. Just how confused, just how confused the Taylor Swift fan accounts were about this Mahomesian figure walking into a strange place on the Nebraska football Twitter account. And, he is kind of taking it to the next level with the haircut,
shades,
the dress, the shades, everything about it. I don't know. He's going to go out and try to play like Patrick Mahomes. I think that's the bottom line. And that's what Nebraska fans should like from this.
I appreciate So we could do the comparisons now, but if he's not Mahomesian during the games, then it becomes like a distant memory. But if there's things that he makes a sidearm, he makes a left-handed throw when he's trying to ditch one off or something like
he
that.
He may try that.
Yeah, we're just gonna this legend will keep growing. There's no doubt about it. So people love any content of Dylan Raiola. Speaking of which. They'll gobble Mitch's next story up on the Athletic. Mitch, tell us a little bit about what you wrote and basically a good account of the Raiola offseason here.
Yeah, I've got a story coming out Wednesday on the Athletic. It should be online this morning, not at the moment yet as we record this thing early, but look for it on Wednesday morning. And this is just about the offseason that Dylan Raiola has enjoyed at Nebraska, what he's done. Interestingly, and this may shock some of the Chiefs fans even more, Dylan works out with Bobby Strope, as he's talked about. This is not new news, and Jeff Christensen. These two figures are the personal trainer and quarterbacks coach of one Patrick Mahomes. So he has sought them out because look at what they've done for Mahomes in winning back-to-back Super Bowls and going back early in his career. Actually, Strope, who began his time as a trainer in Texas, has been with Mahomes since high school or maybe even before that. And Matt Rule has some history at from his time at Baylor with Bobby Strope. Christensen, he also trains Heinrich Harburg. He trained Baker Mayfield, who Rule had in the NFL. So there's a lot of connections here. That's part of the story. And then the other part of the story is what Dylan Raiola has done in these 3 months since the spring game to get in good with his teammates. And you'll hear about taking the offensive lineman out for pizza. That's an expensive endeavor if you're the quarterback. We'll hear about flying his receivers to the state of Texas for a workout around Jeff Christensen's facility in North Texas. That's something that I don't think we've ever seen from a quarterback at Nebraska before. We've also never seen a quarterback at Nebraska who had a 7-figure NIL deal. So let's not feel too bad for Dylan. He's doing the right things, as Bryce Benhart said. So that's cool to see, and look for that on the Athletic on Wednesday.
NIL is a hell of a deal if it could earn you some goodwill with your teammates who, like we talked about, I mean, they got some experience here. New guy coming in. Who is this hot shot? Well, guess what? Why don't you come on, eat some pizza with me? I'll on my tab, and then we'll break bread. We'll figure it out from there. I'm looking forward to the story today on the Athletic from Mitch. When we return for the third segment, a couple little news items from yesterday that we may have missed, and one injury note that we wanted to throw in there as well. We'll come back with that next in the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV and you have to turn down the volume with all the shouting, make the switch today to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today delivers can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels. That part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Mitch Sherman here to talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Okay, final few minutes of the show on this Wednesday. Locked On Nebraska. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic here with Connor Happer of Omaha's 1620 The Zone. Not a ton of news, Connor, that came out from Tuesday as Nebraska met the media. No big bombshells or anything with injuries. But we did hear that Tristan Alvano, the sophomore place kicker, will miss some time in the first part of August as he recovers from a groin injury. He had a procedure done, surgery, in other words, to fix the issue coming out of spring practice, and he's just making his way back onto the field. Tristan Alvano was, I believe, number 9 on our list of most important Huskers that we went through here in the month of July. He is essential for Nebraska because there's no proven kicker behind him. Huskers brought in Nico Otto-Manelli, the true freshman out of New Jersey, to work as a kicker. And then you've also got John Hull, a kid out of Lincoln who was at Iowa Western and redshirted last season. So there are a couple kickers in camp to keep the field goals flying as Alvano works back from this injury. But they need a reliable player there, and he's their best bet at this moment.
You did not get the sense from the coaching staff or from Rule or Foley yesterday that the injury was anything that they are going to be really concerned about as we get closer and closer to the season. However, I hear the word groin and, had a little surgery to clean it up. And I don't know, you just never know how those things are going to go. And this is an important time. Like you said, the kicking depth is one thing, but this is where guys can kind of separate themselves at the beginning of camp, and it's important time to get your kind of base on you for the season. So I do think it is like definitely something to watch here. How much time he'll be in? I don't think because it's not like a college football video game where you bring the guy back and he's full, he's ready to go. It's a kicker and it's a groin. So it's definitely something that I'm going to be watching when he returns, if and when he returns, midway through camp here in a couple of weeks, because it doesn't really sit all that well with me at the moment. With that being said, maybe it's just overly precautious. We'll see. But I'm watching it.
Well, I think that feeling exists in part because there was already some concern about Tristan Alvano and how reliable he was going to be. He had a good freshman year, set the record for the longest field goal kicked by a freshman in Nebraska history. But there was some inconsistency, and that's to be expected of a freshman. And then he missed 2 field goals in the spring game that there was a groaning from the Memorial Stadium crowd when that happened. And I think a collective groan out here among the public who wasn't at that game. Maybe this groin injury, I'm just throwing this out there, contributed to some of his inconsistencies in the spring. And that's why he needed to get that fixed. So it'll be interesting to hear that. I should have asked Foley about that on Tuesday, and we'll kind of pose that possibility the next time we talk to Ed or get to chat with Tristan, or Matt Rule could perhaps answer that question. But yeah, it's look, there have been various ways over the last decade, just about every way imaginable, that seasons have gone off the tracks at Nebraska. And one of them that we saw, I believe it was in 2019, was when Nebraska had a flurry of injuries at the kicker position. And it started in preseason camp and just continued on into October to the point where they were trying out players from the club soccer team. It was a mess. There were 7 different guys who kicked the ball at some point during the year. That's not what Nebraska needs in Matt Rule's second year. That was Scott Frost's second year, by the way. Yeah. So they don't need to go down that road again.
It started with Barrett Pickering getting hurt playing golf, I believe. So that was great. And then you ended up having a safety kick a game-winning field goal, a walk-on safety kick a game-winning field goal. You had a person who worked at Lead Belly doing the kickoffs for you. So we don't need to go down that road again. We really, really don't. I don't want to deal with that in 2024.
No doubt about that. And I don't think they will. This looks to be an isolated thing with Tristan, and expect to see him back by mid-August and ready to go for the season opener on the 31st against UTEP 1 month from today. If for whatever reason that injury lingers, they have legitimate kickers behind him. They have Otto-Manelli, who's part of the 120. I believe John Hull is also part of the 120, although We'll get full confirmation on the players, the specialists, and everybody who's on that group when we get to see a practice.
Yeah.
This is going to happen on Saturday. I know you're going to be busy with some other things, but when we get to see a practice on Saturday, I'm excited about that. Fans can go out and pay their $25 and get in and support Nebraska's collective, or the media can we're going to sit in the stands with the fans. Can't wait. I don't want to go in the press box. I don't care if it's 100 degrees. We're going to get the full fan experience on Saturday.
One thing that people definitely won't overreact to is I'm sure the media will be distributed at a camp 120. And one thing that Rule said yesterday is, hey, there's going to be some scholarship guys that aren't on here, and there's going to be some walk-ons who are. And he already mentioned a couple walk-ons that did make it. Really curious to see that and what that might look like and why. And definitely something that will not be overreacted to on Saturday. So
what even is a walk-on in today's world of college football or a scholarship player? And it's the lines are blurred so much because of NIL that it's hard to even know. But you're right. It will lead to some conversation. These are the conversations that we need to have in the first days of August.
All right. That is it for us today. Once again, Mitch will take you through the rest of the week. Don't forget to get your questions in for the Mailbag Show. You can email lockedonneb@gmail.com. You can tweet at lockedonneb. So why don't you do that and keep Mitch company for the next couple days, and then a guest on Friday before I'll be back. Should be back anyway on Monday. Before we let you go, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories today with the local experts of Locked On like us, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app.